I was standing in a penthouse in downtown Seattle when she said it. Natalie, my girlfriend of 3 years, looked me straight in the eyes and yelled it loud enough for everyone to hear. "You will never be good enough for me." Her friends stood frozen champagne glasses halfway to their lips. The city lights sparkled behind her through floor-to-ceiling windows. I felt something crack inside me, but not the way you would think. It was not heartbreak. It was clarity. I smiled, and I meant it when I said, "You were probably right." Then I turned around, walked out the door, got in my Honda Civic, and drove away. I never looked back. Before I tell you what happened after that moment, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. And if you have ever been told you were not enough by someone who should have valued you, hit that like button and subscribe. Because what I did next changed my entire life. And it started the second I stopped trying to be enough for the wrong person. My name is Charleston. I am 28 years old and I work as a software engineer at a tech startup here in Seattle. I make about $85,000 a year, which is decent, nothing flashy, but enough to live comfortably. I have always been the kind of guy who keeps things simple. I like hiking on weekends, cooking dinner at home, reading about new technologies, and spending time with people who actually care about substance over status. I guess you could say I am not the type to chase after expensive cars or designer clothes. I just never saw the point. I met Natalie 3 years ago at a networking event downtown. She worked as a sales manager for a high-end fashion company, and the first time I saw her, I was struck by how confident she seemed. She had this energy about her, this drive that made everyone in the room turn and look when she walked in. We started talking by the snack table, and she told me she liked that I seemed different from the other guys there. She said I seemed real. Our first date was at a small coffee shop in Capitol Hill. We talked for hours about everything from our childhoods to our dreams for the future. She told me she wanted to build something meaningful with her career, and I told her I wanted to create software that actually helped people. We just clicked. A few weeks later, I cooked dinner for her at my apartment. Nothing fancy, just pasta and homemade garlic bread, and she said it was the best meal she had ever had. Not because of the food, but because of the effort. Because I cared. She told me that night, "I love that you are real, Charleston. Not like those pretentious guys I usually meet." That was the Natalie I fell for. The one who valued authenticity. The one who laughed at my terrible jokes and did not care that I drove an old car. We went hiking together at Mount Rainier that summer, and I remember thinking this was the woman I could spend my life with. But then something changed. About 6 months into our relationship, Natalie got promoted. Suddenly, her income nearly doubled. She started getting invited to exclusive events, fancy parties, networking dinners, with people who had more money than sense. At first, I was happy for her. She deserved success. She worked hard for it. But with the promotion came new friends. And with those new friends came a new Natalie. She started dressing differently. Designer handbags replaced her old leather purse. Her closet filled up with clothes that cost more than my rent. She began spending her weekends at high-end brunches and charity galas instead of hiking trails and quiet dinners. I tried to be supportive. I went with her to a few of these events wearing the nicest suit I owned, smiling politely at people whose conversations revolved around vacation homes and luxury cars. But the comments started slowly. Little things at first. "When are you getting a better car, Charleston? You should really dress better when we go out with my friends. Jessica's boyfriend just bought her a diamond bracelet from Tiffany. Did you see it?" Each comment felt like a tiny cut, small enough to ignore on its own, but together they added up to something that hurt. I started noticing that Natalie did not want to go hiking anymore. She would rather go shopping or spend hours at the spa. When I suggested we cook dinner together like we used to, she would sigh and say she was too tired. Then suggest we order from some trendy restaurant that charged $40 for a salad. I tried to adapt. I bought a few new suits. I took her to nicer restaurants, even though it strained my budget. I went to her events and smiled through conversations with people who looked at me like I was invisible. But I could not shake the feeling that I was losing myself. I started asking myself late at night, am I not enough? The question haunted me. I loved Natalie. I wanted to believe that we would get through this phase, that she would remember what we had in the beginning. I kept telling myself that this was just her adjusting to a new lifestyle, that she would find her balance again. I was wrong. The past 3 months had been increasingly difficult. Natalie became more critical, more distant. She stopped asking about my day. She stopped laughing at my jokes. Instead, she started comparing me to her friends' partners. You know Tyler just got promoted to senior vice president. He is only 30. When are you going to move up at your company? Or, did you see the car that Preston drives? A Porsche. That is what success looks like. She started calling me ordinary. No ambition. Too simple. Her friends were all wealthy, successful in the traditional sense. Entrepreneurs, lawyers, investment bankers. And I was just Charleston, the software engineer who still drove the same Honda Civic I bought 5 years ago and thought a perfect weekend was a hike followed by a home-cooked meal. 2 weeks ago, we had our biggest fight yet. I suggested we go camping that weekend, just the two of us, like we used to. She looked at me like I had suggested we live in a cardboard box. Camping. Are you serious, Charleston? I have a yacht party to go to on Saturday. A yacht party. I did not even know people actually said things like that in real life. I asked her the question that had been building in my chest for months. Do you even want to be with me anymore? She went quiet for a long moment, then said, I want to be with someone who can keep up with my lifestyle, not someone who is content with mediocrity. Those words hit harder than any insult she could have thrown at me. I told her I am not going to change who I am just to impress your friends. We did not talk for 3 days after that, but I still hoped. I still thought maybe, just maybe, she would remember why she fell for me in the first place. So when she called on Friday afternoon and invited me to a party at her friend Stephanie's penthouse, I said yes. I thought maybe this was her way of trying again. Maybe she wanted to show me off to her friends in a good way this time. I put on my best suit, bought flowers and a bottle of wine, and drove downtown with hope still flickering in my chest. I should have known better. Stephanie's penthouse was everything you would expect from someone born into wealth. Floor-to-ceiling windows with a view of Elliott Bay modern furniture that probably cost more than my car, and a bartender mixing craft cocktails in the corner. When I walked in, there were already 6 or 7 people there, all dressed like they had just stepped off a yacht themselves. Natalie greeted me at the door with a cold smile and took the flowers without really looking at them. This is Charleston, she said to the group, her voice flat. My boyfriend. Not the warm introduction I had hoped for. Nobody seemed particularly interested in meeting me. They went back to their conversations about summer homes in the Hamptons and upcoming trips to Europe. I stood there holding my wine bottle, feeling completely out of place. I tried to make conversation. I really did. I talked to a woman named Courtney about her work in marketing. I listened to a man named Preston brag about his tech startup that had just secured Series B funding. But every time I opened my mouth, I felt Natalie's eyes on me, watching, judging. And every time I caught her looking, she would glance away with an expression I could not quite read. Embarrassment, maybe, or disappointment. Preston was the worst. He had that confident smirk of someone who had never been told no in his life. He drove a Porsche, wore a watch that probably cost more than I made in 6 months, and seemed to take pleasure in making others feel small. When he found out I was a software engineer, his eyes lit up. Oh yeah, which company? Google, Amazon, Microsoft. A startup, I said. You probably have not heard of it. His smile widened. Ah, still waiting for the big break, huh? Good luck with that, man. A few people chuckled. Natalie did not defend me. In fact, she looked away, sipping her champagne like she agreed with him. I should have left then. But I stayed because I was still holding on to the hope that this night would somehow turn around. That Natalie would remember who we were before all of this. I wandered over to the windows and looked out at the city lights reflecting off the dark water. Seattle looked beautiful from up here. Clean, simple, far removed from the complicated mess I felt standing in this room. Stephanie, the host, was talking loudly about a trip to the Maldives she was planning. She turned to Natalie with bright eyes. You should totally come with us, Nat. 2 weeks of pure luxury. We are renting a private island. Natalie's face lit up in a way I had not seen in months. Oh my God, that sounds amazing. I would love to. Then Stephanie glanced at me, and her smile faltered slightly. Oh right. Well, maybe you could come alone, just us girls. I felt the sting of being excluded, but I kept my face neutral. It was fine. I did not belong in their world anyway. I had known that for a while now. I just had not wanted to admit it. I set down my glass and turned to Natalie. I think I should leave. You have fun with your friends. I said it quietly, not wanting to make a scene. I just wanted to go home to stop pretending that I fit into this life she had built. But Natalie had been drinking champagne all night and something in her snapped. "You know what, Charleston?" Her voice cut through the room like glass breaking. Everyone stopped talking. All eyes turned to us. "You will never be good enough for me." The words hung in the air, sharp and final. She kept going, her voice rising. "I tried. I really did. But you are just too ordinary, too simple. I deserve someone who can match my level, someone who actually has ambition." The room went completely silent. I could feel every pair of eyes on me. Preston had that smug smile on his face. Courtney looked uncomfortable, staring down at her drink. Stephanie's mouth was slightly open in shock. And Natalie stood there, chest heaving, waiting for me to react. Waiting for me to yell back, to defend myself, to beg her to take it back. But something strange happened in that moment. Instead of feeling crushed, I felt calm. Crystal, clear, calm. Because hearing those words out loud in front of all these people made me realize something I should have understood months ago. I did not want this. I did not want to be with someone who measured my worth by the car I drove or the brand name on my clothes. I did not want to spend my life trying to prove myself to people who would never see me as enough no matter what I did. So I smiled, a real genuine smile, and I looked Natalie straight in the eyes. "You are probably right," I said. My voice was steady, quiet, but everyone heard it. I turned to the rest of the room. "Have a good evening, everyone." Then I walked to the door. Natalie called after me, but I did not turn around. I walked down the hallway, pressed the button for the elevator, and waited. My hands were not shaking. My heart was not racing. I felt lighter than I had in months. The elevator doors opened, and I stepped inside. As they closed, I caught one last glimpse of the penthouse, the glittering lights, the expensive everything, and I felt nothing but relief. I walked through the lobby and out into the cool Seattle night. My Honda Civic was parked on the street, humble and reliable as always. I got in, started the engine, and pulled away from the curb. I did not know where I was going. I just drove. Away from downtown, away from the pretentious world Natalie had chosen over me, away from the version of myself I had been trying so hard to become. I drove toward the mountains, toward the place where I always went when I needed to think clearly. And for the first time in 3 years, I felt free. The first week after that night was strange. I kept expecting to feel devastated, to break down, to regret walking away. But I did not. Instead, I felt like I had woken up from a long, exhausting dream. I went to work, came home, went to the gym, cooked my own meals. Simple things that I had somehow forgotten how to enjoy. Natalie called me 17 times that first week. I know because I counted. She left voicemails that started angry, then became pleading, then turned desperate. "Charleston, we need to talk." I did not mean what I said. I was drunk. "Please call me back." But I did not answer. Not because I wanted to punish her, but because I knew there was nothing left to say. She had shown me exactly who she had become, and I had shown her exactly who I was. We were not compatible anymore. Maybe we never really had been. I deleted her messages without listening to most of them. I blocked her number after the second week, when the texts became too much. I know that sounds cold, but it was not about being cruel. It was about protecting the peace I had finally found. For 3 years I had bent myself into shapes that did not fit, trying to be someone I was not trying to keep, someone who did not want the real me. I was done with that. Instead, I focused on myself. I started going to the gym every morning before work. Not to get ripped or impress anyone, just because it felt good to do something for myself. I called up old friends I had neglected while I was with Natalie. My buddy Marcus, who I used to play basketball with every weekend before Natalie started filling our calendar with her social events. My college roommate Derek, who had always told me I was losing myself in that relationship, but I had been too stubborn to listen. "We are going hiking this weekend," Derek said when I called him. "Mount C. You in?" And just like that, I was back to being myself again. We spent the whole day on that trail talking about everything except Natalie. They did not ask what happened, and I did not volunteer the information. We just existed in the moment the way real friends do. At work, something unexpected started happening. Without the constant stress of trying to maintain a relationship that was falling apart, I found myself more focused, more creative. I had been working on a project for months, a new feature for our app that could potentially change how users interacted with our platform. I had been stuck on it for weeks, but suddenly the solution appeared clearly in my mind. I stayed late 3 nights in a row, coding, testing, refining. When I presented it to our team lead, she looked impressed. This is exactly what we needed, Charleston. Really solid work. 2 weeks after the breakup, our startup got news that a major tech company was interested in our product. They wanted to meet with us, discuss a potential partnership or acquisition. It was the kind of opportunity we had been working toward for 3 years. And I was not going to lie. Part of me felt vindicated. Not because I wanted to prove anything to Natalie, but because it confirmed something I had always believed. Success was not about flash or status. It was about doing good work and being patient. The meeting went well. Better than well. They offered our company a significant investment, and they specifically wanted to bring me on as a senior engineer. The salary they mentioned was $150,000 a year, nearly double what I was making. I said yes, not because of the money though, that was nice, but because this was the career path I had always wanted, working on projects that mattered with people who valued skill over status. But here is the thing. That promotion, that money, it did not make me feel vindicated or superior. It just made me feel grateful that I had stayed true to myself, that I had not compromised my values trying to impress people who would never have been impressed anyway. I used some of the signing bonus to put a down payment on a small condo closer to the new office. Nothing fancy, just a one-bedroom with a view of the neighborhood park. It was perfect for me. I started volunteering on weekends, teaching coding to kids at a local community center. Something I had always wanted to do but never had time for. When I was busy attending Natalie's endless social events, the kids were great. Curious, enthusiastic, grateful for someone who cared enough to teach them a valuable skill. It reminded me why I got into this field in the first place. Not for money or status, but because technology could change lives. One Saturday afternoon, about a month after everything fell apart, I was at a coffee shop near the community center when I ran into Courtney. She was one of Natalie's friends, the one who had been at the penthouse that night. She saw me and froze, like she was debating whether to pretend she had not noticed me or to actually acknowledge my existence. I made the decision for her. I walked over and said hello. "Charleston," she said, looking genuinely uncomfortable. "Hi. Can we talk for a minute?" I gestured to the empty chair across from me and she sat down. She looked different than she had that night. Less polished, more human. "I owe you an apology," she said. "We all do. What Natalie did to you that night was horrible. But honestly, what we all did to you over the past year was horrible." I did not say anything. I just waited for her to continue. She told me that after I left the penthouse, Natalie cried for hours. Her friends had tried to comfort her at first, but then Stephanie said something that apparently shifted the whole mood. She told Natalie she was pathetic for treating me that way, that I was the only genuine person Natalie had brought around in months, and that she had just thrown away something real for something fake. Preston, the guy with the Porsche, apparently left the party early because his wife had called him. Yes, his wife. He was married and everyone in that group knew it except Natalie. Courtney explained that Natalie's new friend group was not really her friends at all. They were using her for entertainment, for someone to gossip about, for someone to make themselves feel superior to. When Natalie lost me, she had nothing left. The illusion of her perfect new life crumbled fast. Within 2 weeks, she had been edged out of the social circle entirely. Nobody invited her to events anymore. Nobody returned her calls. And her job, Courtney shook her head. She got demoted. Turns out she had been spending so much time networking and socializing that her actual work performance had tanked. Her boss gave her a warning, and when she did not improve, they moved her back down to her old position. Lower pay, less prestige. Everything she had traded me for was gone. And now she is alone, Courtney said. She talks about you all the time. About how she messed up the best thing she ever had. I listened to all of this and I felt something I did not expect. Not satisfaction or vindication, but genuine sadness for her. Not the kind of sadness that made me want to run back to her, but the kind that comes from watching someone destroy themselves with their own choices. I hope she finds what she is looking for, I told Courtney honestly. I hope she learns from this and becomes a better person. Courtney looked at me with something like respect. You are a better person than most, Charleston. She did not deserve you. After Courtney left, I sat there for a while thinking about everything she had told me. Part of me wondered if I should reach out to Natalie offer some kind of closure or forgiveness. But I realized that my silence was not about holding a grudge. It was about respecting my own boundaries. Natalie knew where to find me if she truly wanted to apologize to have a real conversation. But what we had was over, and I had made peace with that. 6 months after that night in the penthouse, my life looked completely different. The startup acquisition had gone through, and I was working for one of the most innovative tech companies in Seattle. The work was challenging and fulfilling. I was part of a team that actually valued collaboration and creativity over ego and status. I had my own office with a window which felt absurdly luxurious for someone who used to work in a cramped open floor plan. But more than the career success, I had found something I did not even know I was missing. Peace. Genuine deep peace with who I was and what I wanted from life. I was hiking every weekend again sometimes, with Derek and Marcus sometimes alone. I cooked elaborate meals on Sunday afternoons and invited friends over. I read books that had nothing to do with work. I volunteered every Saturday morning teaching coding to kids who reminded me why passion mattered more than profit. And then, I met Grace. She was a third-grade teacher who volunteered at the same community center running an art program for kids. I noticed her one Saturday because she was trying to fix the ancient printer in the volunteer office, cursing softly under her breath. I offered to help, and within 10 minutes I had it working again. She looked at me like I had just performed magic. "You are my hero," she said with a laugh. "I am Grace, by the way." "Charleston," I replied. And something about the way she smiled at me, genuine and warm, made me want to keep talking to her. We started having coffee after our volunteer sessions. Nothing romantic at first, just two people who enjoyed each other's company. She told me about her students, about the kid who could not read at the beginning of the year but was now devouring chapter books. I told her about the teenager I was teaching who had just built her first website. Grace did not care that I drove an old Honda, or that I wore jeans and a plain shirt instead of designer clothes. She cared that I showed up every week to help kids who needed someone to believe in them. One evening after we had known each other for about 2 months, we went to dinner at a small Thai restaurant in her neighborhood. Nothing fancy, just good food and easy conversation. She told me about growing up in Portland, about her parents who were both teachers, about how she had always known she wanted to work with children. I told her about my family in Spokane, about how I got into coding because my uncle gave me his old computer when I was 12. We talked until the restaurant started putting chairs up on tables. As we walked to our cars, she said something that stopped me in my tracks. "I really like you, Charleston. You are one of the most genuine people I have ever met." And I realized I liked her too. Not because she was impressive or connected or glamorous, but because she was kind and passionate and real. We started dating slowly, carefully. There was no rush, no pressure, to be anything other than ourselves. And for the first time since Natalie, I felt like I was in a relationship that actually fit. Grace met my friends and loved them. She went hiking with us and did not complain once about the steep trails. She came to my condo and cooked dinner with me, laughing when we accidentally burned the garlic bread. She did not care about status or money or impressing anyone. She just cared about building something real with someone who valued the same things she did. And I realized this was what I had been looking for all along. Not someone who saw my potential to become something else, but someone who loved who I already was. One night, about 4 months into our relationship, we were sitting on my couch, watching a terrible action movie when she turned to me. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Of course. Were you always this comfortable with yourself? Or did something happen that changed you?" I thought about it for a moment, then told her about Natalie. About the penthouse, the cruel words, the moment I walked away. Grace listened without interrupting, and when I finished, she took my hand. "That must have been really hard," she said. "But I am glad it happened. Not glad you got hurt, but glad you chose yourself, because that is the version of you I get to know now." And that is when I realized something important. Natalie breaking my heart was not the tragedy I thought it was. It was a gift. It forced me to look at who I had become, to recognize that I had been slowly erasing myself to fit into someone else's vision of success. Walking out of that penthouse was not giving up. It was choosing myself for the first time in 3 years. And everything good that had happened since the career growth, the renewed friendships, meeting Grace, all of it came. Because I finally had the courage to stop settling for someone who saw me as not enough. I did not hate Natalie. I did not even resent her anymore. I hoped she had found her way, learned her lessons, become someone who valued substance over surface. But that was her journey, not mine. Mine was about learning that the right person would never make me feel like I needed to be anyone other than who I was. The right person would see my worth without me having to prove it. It has been almost a year now since that night. I still drive the same Honda Civic, though it has a few more miles on it from all the weekend hiking trips. I still live simply, still value authenticity over appearance. But my life is richer than it has ever been, not because of money or status, but because I am surrounded by people who actually care about me. Real friends, meaningful work, a woman who loves me for exactly who I am. I heard through mutual acquaintances that Natalie moved to California a few months ago. A fresh start, they said. I hope it works out for her. I genuinely do. Not because I want her back, or because I am holding on to anything, but because I understand now that hurt people hurt people. Natalie was chasing something she thought would make her happy, and she was willing to sacrifice real connection to get it. That is not evil. That is just sad. I hope she learns what I learned. That you cannot build a meaningful life on a foundation of superficial things. Last week, Grace and I were hiking at Mount Rainier, the same trail I used to take with Natalie years ago. We stopped at a lookout point, and Grace pulled out her phone to take a picture of the view. Then she turned the camera toward us and took a selfie of us smiling, sweaty, and happy. "You know what I love about you," she said. "You are exactly who you say you are. No pretense, no games, just you." And I realized that was the best compliment anyone had ever given me. That night at the penthouse, when Natalie told me I would never be good enough for her, she was absolutely right. I would never be good enough for her. Because she was looking for someone who could accessorize her life, who could make her look successful, who could keep up with a lifestyle built on appearances. And I was never going to be that person. But here is what I learned. I did not need to be. I needed to be good enough for myself. I needed to live according to my own values, pursue my own definition of success, build relationships based on genuine connection rather than social status. The day I walked out of that penthouse was not the day I lost love. It was the day I found self-respect. And that changed everything. Sometimes the worst thing someone can say to you becomes the catalyst for the best thing that ever happens to you. Because it forces you to make a choice. You can either shrink yourself down to fit their expectations, or you can stand up and say, "I deserve better than this." I chose the latter. And every day since, I have been grateful for that choice. So, if you are in a relationship where you constantly feel like you are not enough, where you are always changing yourself to meet someone else's standards, where you are sacrificing your values to maintain their approval, let me tell you something. You are enough, exactly as you are. And if they cannot see that it is not a reflection of your worth, it is a reflection of their inability to recognize value when it is right in front of them. Walking away is not weakness, it is strength. It is saying, "I value myself too much to accept less than I deserve." And when you finally do that, when you finally choose yourself, everything else starts to fall into place. The right job, the right friends, the right person, they all appear because you are finally living as your authentic self, and authenticity attracts authenticity. That night, standing in that expensive penthouse, surrounded by people who measured worth in dollar signs and brand names, I made the most important decision of my life. I chose dignity over desperation. I chose self-respect over a relationship that was slowly destroying me. And I walked out with my head held high, knowing that whatever came next had to be better than what I was leaving behind. And it was. It really truly was. Now let me ask you something. Have you ever been in a situation where someone made you feel like you were not enough? Did you stay and try to change yourself, or did you walk away? Drop your story in the comments below. I would love to hear from you. And if this story resonated with you, if you have ever had to choose yourself over someone who did not value you, hit that like button. Subscribe to this channel for more stories about real life, real struggles, and real growth. And share this video with someone who needs to hear that they are enough exactly as they are. Thank you for listening to my story. I know it was not easy to hear, just like it was not easy to live through. But I am grateful for every moment of it because it taught me the most valuable lesson I have ever learned. You cannot build a meaningful life by sacrificing who you are for someone else's approval. The only approval that matters is your own. So be true to yourself, set boundaries, and never settle for anyone who makes you feel small. You deserve someone who sees you for who you are, and loves you because of it, not despite it. Take care of yourselves out there. Choose yourself, always.